Howdy, and welcome back to The Backmarkers, the F1 podcast for new fans by new fans. My name is Mike Hurley, and I am joined by the Austin Grand Prix.
Hello, I am the Austin Grand Prix. Unfortunately, the plans to run the race entirely on horseback was unsuccessful, but we did have quite a... I was going to make some stupid cowboy reference, but nah, I wasn't ready for that. You can't just hit me with a howdy.
Howdy. I saw...
Howdy, partner.
I don't remember which. It's one of the F1 journalists I follow. I think it might be the guy from WTF1. I don't remember, and I feel... Matt Gallagher, I think it was.
Yeah.
I saw after qualifying said about Daniel Ricciardo, you cannot ride a horse into the paddock and then go out in Q1. That is not a thing that you can do. And I agree. You cannot make such a big thing and then perform to that level.
Man, it was a race. It was boring for half a second. Then it got spicy. Then it got real spicy.
I enjoyed this one. This is one of my favorite races of the season. It had
totally
all of
agree.
the stuff that I enjoy, I'll say quote unquote enjoy, right? I'll say all of the things that make a race thrilling, I think is maybe a better way to put it, i.e. accidents and DNFs, right? They're bring up the adrenaline. Luckily, everyone's good from them. And also fights and unexpected stuff and some real top to bottom good shootouts as we got. So, Austin, do you want to give us a quick rundown of the finishing order? And then I want to talk about some stuff that's happened in between the Grand Prix.
Absolutely. So, Max Verstappen, surprise, shock, and awe, was able to win this one. Lewis Hamilton, though, P2 and Leclerc P3 for the podium. And then going down the list, we've got ourselves a very exciting Checo P4. We've got Russell P5. Lando actually barely came in P6. I don't think they caught it on the TV feed, but he ended up, I think, last lap grabbing P6 off of Alonso, who came in P7. And same thing, Sebastian Vettel picked up P8 with a turn or two turns to go over Kevin Magnussen, and Yuki Tsunoda pulled out the P10 with the last points-paying position. Points-paying position. That's a fun phrase to say.
Who got the 10th, did you say?
Yuki. Yuki got 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
It all got a bit wild at the end.
And it was the thing is that the TV director are trying to show, Max and all that kind of stuff, but there's so much happening.
They made the right call
last minute
to switch over to Vettel because Vettel and Magnussen, I think at one point were driving the same car. They got so close to each other. It's just he could reach over and just pull the car left. I don't know how it works, but yeah, it was.
It's like
really
Ricky Bobby.
awesome.
You just reach through.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man.
So we're going to put a pin in that for a minute because so much has happened in the last 2 weeks. Last week? I don't even know anymore. It feels like it's been an eternity. So there was some sad news over the weekend that Red Bull, co-owner of Red Bull Drinks, but team owner of Red Bull Racing, Dietrich Mateschitz, he passed away, which is very sad. I didn't really know much about the guy, to be honest, until this weekend. And they were saying that he was very much a person kept to himself. It's not like some of the other team owners and people involved in teams that we see as a main fixture of the paddock. If he was there, we never really got to see him very much. But there was just some really cool stuff that they were saying on the broadcast today. Obviously bought two teams, right? Didn't just buy one team, right? And this is 8 out of the 20 drivers that raced today benefit from the Red Bull driver program. So as an individual who cared about the sport, probably aren't that many more in history, right? That would have had the effect that he has had and that his legacy will continue to have. So it's very, very sad. But I think a touching tribute today from Red Bull.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think obviously he was a incredibly influential person, not just across Formula One, but through a massive variety of sports that Red Bull really has funded. I mean, there are entire sporting leagues that Red Bull fully owns. They own Formula One tracks. They own teams. They actually used to own a huge portion of Sauber back in the day.
I didn't know that.
I
guess that was their start, right? That's how they kind of dipped toe in the water to see if this is something that they wanted to do. Kind of like we've been talking about with the Volkswagen Group, right? We'll pick up a sponsorship here and we'll do an engine here. But it would seem at least that they were maybe angling towards something bigger.
Yeah, and I think it's just the legacy is unbelievable, right? I mean, you look at how he took a little drinks company that no one knew of and turned it into this massive, massive, really sporting business that
Yes.
just happens to sell the drinks to kind of promote that, right? You kind of argue the other way around, which is
I
also sort
honestly
of
think
true. But
it's hand in hand at some points with Red
yes,
Bull. I
yeah,
do wonder,
absolutely.
like, you know, I don't because I don't really know much about this. Like, if he was such a champion, I wonder if there will be any change to Red Bull now.
Yes. So what and obviously this is all a little bit based on rumor and conjecture, but there was a very heavy rumor that Porsche were incredibly close to buying into 50% of Red Bull Racing just a few months ago. And obviously that fell through, but it seems like that was one of the things that there were rumors that that Matishiz's health was not in great places.
Yeah, I
And
know
so
this is very uncouth, and I do not want to say any. Like, just listen to this. What I'm saying, I read on Twitter that this happened like 3 weeks ago, that it was trending that he died. Now, obviously, he didn't.
oh wow.
I saw this, and I was
Oh,
surprised
okay.
about it. And then I went and looked into the guy a little bit. It's like this was the
Yeah.
thing that I saw. It was in my trending on Twitter multiple weeks ago that he passed away. So maybe
Oh.
it had been learned that his health was poor or something. I don't know what on earth was happening there, but like that was a thing that I was seeing recently.
Yeah.
It was very strange. It was very strange to see that over the weekend because my brain had kind of just locked that piece of information away, right? That had happened.
Yeah, yeah. No, I hadn't heard that there were rumors like that. I knew that there was some talk about his health not being in, particularly great shape. And also there were some rumors that potentially he was sort of as things were kind of maybe winding down with his involvement with the team, potentially selling it off to Porsche or deciding because now I do think there's a little bit of a question as to what happens with the team. Now, obviously, if they're massively successful. It's not going to go away tomorrow or something, but
Who owns it?
who's actually going to be that's exactly the question, right? That as well as Red Bull. I think there are now a lot of loose ends that are going to potentially need to be tied up. Potentially, that sale to Porsche could have been part of that preparing. Obviously, it's not our place to say what should or shouldn't happen, but I do think it will be very much worth keeping an eye out for what's going on to the future. But I think the most important thing is just to really kind of appreciate what an incredible job he has done for the sport and for so many other sports. Like talk about the most like badass dude who's just literally just making so many things happen based on his love and his incredible marketing genius. So I think we all got to kind of take our hats off for that one because it's wild to think about what the sport would look like today if Red Bull, a weird little drinks company, had never stepped into it.
So there is more Red Bull news, but let's like split these two things apart to kind of like, so I don't want to mix them together because it's not necessary. Haas, big news for Haas. They have a new title sponsor, MoneyGram, which is it's one of these like Western Union type money transfer services.
Yep.
I'm very happy for them. I think this, no, genuinely, I'm so happy for Haas about this. So MoneyGram is an American company. Haas is an American company. I saw somebody say this on Twitter. I completely agree. Haas should run their livery with stars and stripes. Why on earth would they not do that? Like, it's madness. Like, they should be the American team for Americans, right? Like, that's what they should be. It will draw. Like, this is what, I can't imagine MoneyGram would have gone together with another team. It's like red and white, which helps, but they're American, right? So, like, it would draw money to the team, which now seems to be a big difference. So Gunter Steiner was saying that this agreement, like this arrangement with MoneyGram over the next multiple years is going to bring them to the top of the budget cap. They are very below the budget cap right now, infamously, and still are the thriftiest team. As people have said a long time about us, they go a long way on little. Well, now they're going to be able to go even longer on more. So they're going to be coming up to the top end of the cost cap now. So their aims now are bigger than ever about being a team that can be in contention. And I think that's fantastic. And I'm excited about that, genuinely, like really excited about that. And I'm very keen to see if this changes, who's going to be their second seat.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, Haas, like you said, has been thrifty. I think is almost too charitable a word. I mean, they have been struggling for most of the time that they've been in Formula One, mostly because almost their entire budget has been pulled directly out of Gene Haas's back pocket. And running a Formula One team out of your back pocket, not the most affordable thing in the world. So it's terrific to see this. You know, else something was interesting watching the US feed, which was running on ABC, which obviously was the Sky feed here in the US. But I was actually seeing some ads for Duracell and for Williams. And there was this huge ad about how Duracell is, you know, cutting edge, just like Williams Racing and all this kind of stuff. I was like, wow, like you would not have seen that, you know, even, you know, a year or two ago, to see that all these sponsors even jumping into what you would consider to be kind of like the true backmarkers of the grid, even being on the worst car or the second worst car or whatever.
Hey, if your
of the
car
year,
crashes, you get on TV. Now, it's up to you as a brand if you want your car, if you want your brand to be on a crashed car. But, you know, Latifi, he's pulling in the views. You know what I mean? He's spinning around, Duracell flying all over the place, you know?
It's the NASCAR approach of make sure you put the logo on the top of the car so when it flips over, you can still see it. It's
talking of this, you've seen these McLaren e-ink displays, right?
Yes.
It's very interesting.
Look, this kind of stuff has been, I feel like, kind of slowly creeping. I mean, so I know that in a lot of other, I believe it's in sports car racing, and I think in IndyCar, there are like actual like, little like panels on the sides of the cars. They'll have like numbers or what have you. So these are, yeah, like you said, e-ink panels that are, I believe they're, if you're like in the cockpit, to the left and to the right, so they're facing up. Although the idea is that these panels each weigh like 250 grams, so they're pretty minimal as far as their weight impact. You can imagine, add a few more of these things throughout the car, could probably charge your buddies over at Google a whole lot more money to be constantly cycling between Chrome things, whatever.
Well, the goal, I would assume, is now these panels are viewable when they're on the car cam, right? They're on the left and right hand side of the driver. Now, if they could be remotely controlled, you could have somebody pay more money at the moment when they're live. I'm being serious. This is why they're doing this.
Yeah.
Why would they choose that area to be dynamically controllable? I expect it so they can say like, hey, brand, you know, we've got like 5 brands in our roster or whatever. We can, if you give us a little bit more money, we can make sure you're the one that's there while we're in the car cam on the live feed.
That is wild. Imagine
why else would you do it?
No, but imagine how intense Formula One is. If there's like a bunch of bidders and just like people who are like betting throughout, there are sponsors who are bidding on the teams. And as the teams get, oh, Lando's up to P3, I'll put an extra $100,000 to be on the side of his car right now.
Yep.
Imagine how wild that would be. I feel that's maybe a little far out, but that's crazy. I didn't even think about that. I just thought it's like, oh, we can like cycle between a couple of logos through the race.
I mean, I feel like this is I mean, we're a ways from that, but I feel like that's what you would do it for, right? And then eventually, if you can make the entire car like this, you know, you can cycle things through to the highest bidder of your roster. I mean, this isn't something we're doing live, but like it's something you would agree, right? Like every time that we go to that the car camera's shown, we can have your logo pop up or whatever.
Absolutely. I like Sherlock in the chat. It's super chats, but on the car. That 100% on point.
Yeah.
The back markers will sponsor Nicholas Latifi for 0.8 of a second going down the straight, please. We think we can afford that, right?
I don't even know if we're good. Okay, so we're talking about the cost cap in these past few weeks. The main thing that's come out of the cost cap discussion, Red Bull were found in breach of overspending in the cost cap by the FIA. Nothing more has come of it yet. Red Bull appear to not agree. Some teams have made a lot of reference to the fact that they consider this to be, you know, like competitors' teams consider this to be egregious no matter what the money is. It could be with, it's over 5% or something, so it could be up to $7 million, anything up to that. Of course, anything up towards that level would make a significant difference and a significant impact on the car. Now, it's a case of Red Bull, like FIA will need to deliver to Red Bull, like this is what we want to penalize you with, and then Red Bull can either accept that or they can say we don't accept that, and then it goes to an adjudication board. The FIA have put this on hold because of the events of the weekend. Austin, I don't even think this is going to get resolved this season, which I think is disgusting personally.
I would expect it to be resolved over the offseason.
Which is mad, right? That like in the offseason, before the 2023 season, we're resolving 2021's budget. So what about 2022's budget? Like, we just do this forever?
Yeah.
I know people, like they think they're going to look through me here, but I've said it in past weeks and I mean it. Like, And hey, look, just look at other teams saying it too. You've got to hit hard. If they are found in breach of this, you've got to hit them hard, because otherwise this entire plan to balance out you can have what we were talking about with Haas gets one new sponsor and they feel like they can start attacking like Mercedes, right? That's only because the cost cap exists. Now, if there ends up that every year people can go up to 5% over, then like we're just going to be doing that forever and kicking it down the road, you know? Or like, you know, if you look at like, let's imagine you're in a title fight and you think you could spend another few $1 million and eke out that win, so you get the win this year because you'd love to win this year and you'll just not worry about next year. Like, it can't be like that. It's got to be hard. It's got to be a very hard penalty if they're found in breach of it.
I do agree. So the current rumor is that while it could, like you said, be by the way they've said it, it could be up to $7 million. It seems like it's closer to $2 million. But the thing is, like we've discussed before, these things get very complicated. There's a lot of nuance. It's a real running joke that it was because they spent $2 million on their catering fees, which probably actually is about right for how much they spend on food across the year. But regardless, I agree. It should be dealt with seriously. It also, I think, is really going to set almost less so for the actual penalty for Red Bull. I almost care less about that than the kind of sort of standard that this is going to put on Formula One, right? Because, you know, you've got like Toto Wolff over here saying, well, Mercedes, yeah, look, if Red Bull get a slap on the hand, we're going to spend double next year because we know that we can get away with it, right? So it's, you know, that all the teams, they've got their sights on Red Bull. They're going to try to tear them down as much as possible. There's going to be minimum leniencies. So it's like, unless Red Bull can convince the FIA or show, oh, actually, wait a minute, no, Max loaned us that money because, oops, we forgot to pay the power bill this month. There's some stupid nonsense like that, which, you know, they're probably going to try to pull something. I think it's going to be interesting to see where it actually lands. But I'm not going to lie, though. I'm kind of tired of hearing about this cost cap. I know it's important, but it's like the worst of the politics of Formula One, where it's like every team who's not Red Bull has all the incentive to be all snarky and be like, well, we kept to the cost cap, or we didn't upgrade. So, okay,
I agree with it. It's tiring, right? It's tiring because it's like all of this grandstanding and rules. It's like the worst part of the sport. But this one feels pretty like it's going to set the precedent. So it's up to the FIA to do whatever they want the precedent to be, really. Like that's going to be it. I want to read, moving on. We've got two more things left before we actually talk about today's race. It's been a busy week. I want to read from Chris Medland. He's a great journalist I follow, at Chris Medland F1. Great Twitter follow if you want like good balanced, I feel like, F1 journalism. This is about Williams' second seat. I will read verbatim because this is incredibly confusing, very complex stuff. Logan Sargent, we mentioned him before, American F2 driver. He had he did one of the practice sessions this weekend for Williams. Logan Sargent will race for Williams in 2023 if he secures the required super license points in the F2 finale in Abu Dhabi. To get that super license, if his two FP1 runs are over 100 kilometers, because he did one, he's going to do another one, and penalty free, he'll need to end the Abu Dhabi weekend in the top 6 in the F2 championship. He's currently P3, 9 points ahead of P6. If FP1 outings don't yield extra points, so if those don't help him, then he needs to be in the top 5. Goes on to say reliability isn't always great in F2, as Logan himself has found out at times this year. So if this does throw up the interesting scenario of what happens if things don't go in his way in Abu Dhabi, as unlikely as dropping further than P7 is. So if he can do what needs to be done, he's going to be a Formula One rookie next year. If he doesn't, you know what I mean? I hope Josh Capito's got a second plan, you know?
A third plan, because I think his first plan was to bring in a certain other driver who got pulled into AlphaTauri. Look, to understand what's going on here, you need one of those serial killer boards. You know, the ones like the pen board where you've got like the strings and you're like dragging everything across. Like, it's crazy. But I think the simpler way to approach it is that, short of something going very wrong for Logan Sargent, he can just kind of do okay in that final race and get his. He
just finish it decent, and he'll be a rookie.
Yeah. So, Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I know that his first practice session was fine. You know that he's going to have to be playing very, very carefully to not pick up any penalties or anything like that. So you've got to assume he's going to be on his best behavior. But it seems pretty likely that he will be the second driver for Williams next year, and I'm excited to see. I mean, look, we saw a lot more from Latifi today of just nonsense. I think it would be nice to have 20 full-fledged drivers on the grid and not 19-ish, which is what we've had recently. So I feel like I'll leave it at that.
Speaking about drivers on the grid, last thing, Daniel Ricciardo is suggesting that he will be a reserve driver for next year, and it is expected it will probably be for Red Bull.
Yeah, spicy. So he was asked, and I'll give Danny Rick some credit. I mean, he's been very honest and open about this whole thing. There was some talk about, like, oh, would you consider driving for Haas? He's like, no offense, but no, I'm not doing that. And it's just like, wow, like not even like a maybe or whatever. Like he's very convinced. There were a lot of rumors that potentially Danny Rick would go over to be the Mercedes reserve driver, since they're actually down a reserve driver with Nick DeVries leaving. I don't think they have a ready-made replacement, although I'm sure there's some juniors they could pull up. But it seems like the rumor is that Danny Rick might go back to Red Bull, admittedly in a far less illustrious role than he was originally. I mean, he didn't want to be the second driver, so he became the third driver.
I mean, when he goes to Red Bull, it will just take him a few weeks to get used to the car, as it always does. He just needs a little time to get used to the car. He just needs a little time to get used to the car. It's all it'll take, just a little time. Just a little time. All right. Let's talk about the U.S. Grand Prix based in Austin, Texas. Oh, Carlos. Oh, poor Carlos. I mean, it's where it starts, right? You don't get nothing more than turn one. Oh, Carlos.
Look, that's one of those things where I agree that was George's fault, but I also very much agree that Carlos was a little tentative. Obviously, he messed up the launch, so Max got around him. He was out of position. You could tell that, and obviously it's a very difficult position to be in, but you could tell that he was a little bit like, not sure, and I didn't have great sight. He didn't really fully commit and got absolutely collected by George.
Yep.
Which George went in too hard, no doubt, and he did get a deserved penalty.
He got what's been the standard of this season penalty, right? That like a turn one collision, if you're at fault, you get a 5-second stop-go penalty, which he did, and it was
not stop-go, just because stop-go is a different thing. A stop-go is you.
Oh, when you have to pull in, it was the 5-second penalty delivered in the pits. Yep. Yeah, stop-go is when you have to drive in. And I always feel like I don't know why they're not the same thing. You know what I mean? It's just like...
No, that's the super severe one, because then you have to, because you're burning, 20, 25 seconds?
And you can't
change your tires or anything. Yeah.
Okay.
That's like the bad.
Is there a phrase then for a 5-second penalty served in the pit lane?
Well, I think all 5-second penalties would be served in the pit lane. The only difference is that if you don't go and if it happens and you don't take a pit stop, they just add it to your race time.
Right, but stop and go, obviously, there's nothing you can do about it. You got to stop.
Exactly, which is also what happened to Pierre, which I'll say Pierre got it for being a little bit behind the car during the safety car, which I think was kind of bad. And then while we're recording, I don't think it's actually been fully settled, but it seemed like he came in for his 5-second penalty. They changed tires and everything, but potentially he didn't wait the full 5 seconds.
So they're probably going to add it on.
Yeah,
again.
That just seems like doubly unfair for someone who, I mean, if you look at what George did, which is completely wipe out a Ferrari from the lead of the race to Pierre being a little bit behind a car. And
also on the replay, you can see it. The car in front of him sped up and he just, he didn't. It's not the worst.
He shouldn't have done that. But I think a 5-second penalty seems a little
comparing the two. George is much worse, right? But it was so unfortunate that he had to retire. Obviously his race would have been mostly ruined. He might have been able to pull something together. We'll talk about Fernando, but Fernando sure as hell made it work. But I just felt so bad for Carlos. An absolutely cracking qualifying lap. And it was just incredibly unfortunate for him. But yeah, it was one of those turn one incidents, right? It was a mixture of things, as you say, right? From Max getting away in front of him to Carlos being a bit hesitant to the Mercedes racing against each other. And all of these three things added up to the point where there was a collision. And that was beautiful reactions from the people around them, right? I don't know how Lewis didn't get involved in that. There was quite a few cars that dealt with that really well, which is always super cool to see.
I just think it's one of those things that when you watch it on TV, it's cool. When you think about what the drivers are seeing, not from that angle, it's above their heads, but what you see from the cockpit with your tiny little mirrors and your size of your car up to your eyeballs, the fact that these guys have such sort of positional awareness, besides maybe a little bit Carlos on that one, but even so, like just what they're able to kind of pull off, I think is incredibly impressive, right? Like you and I sitting in a Formula One car, we're going to see about like this much in front of us. You're not be like, but these guys are so aware. Everyone's completely steaming into turn one, cold tires, cold brakes, launch up that massive hill. Mike, I don't know. Have you ever been to Coda before?
No.
It is. So I've actually had the fortunate, not in a Formula One car, but I've actually been able to drive on the circuit before.
It's beautiful. It's one of my favorite circuits visually.
It absolutely is. It's one thing to look at it on TV, that, the top of turn one. It's another thing to actually be on top there. I actually got the opportunity to actually kind of walk around as well and, do a little bit of driving on it. And when you're standing at the top of that, looking down at the top of the pit lane, it is crazy. So to consider those guys going in with the cold brakes, just absolutely steaming up that hill, it's not a surprise at all that there are these massive accidents. But it's one of those things where it started out very spicy, because we had some people out of position. We had Leclerc, who was starting, I think he was starting from 12th. Checo had a penalty, and then a bunch of other people sort of toward the back also had penalties. But almost immediately, the jeopardy was out of the race, right? I mean, Max, boom, gone right down the road. And it seemed like that just might have been it. But oh boy, that was not the story of this race.
Yeah. The collisions in general were violent today, I think.
Yeah. I mean, we got to talk about Alonso trying to turn his car into an airplane and still finishing.
Popping a wheelie, baby.
Look. Okay, let's just compare for a second. Okay, so Carlos got bumped a little bit on the side, wrecked some water line or some radiator, water leak out of the race. Fernando Alonso was flying through the air and still finished 7th. I could not believe. Like, how obviously certain parts of these cars are very strong and certain parts are incredibly fragile, right? And it does seem like there's a real roll of the dice anytime you have any kind of accident or anything like that. I mean, Checo did the entire race with, half his front wing missing. George's is flapping in the wind. Like, it's really interesting to see what the components of these cars really matter, which don't. But the fact that Alonso was flying through the air, landed, hit the barrier.
Violent to see. Very violent.
I was surprised that he even kept driving. I thought, of course he's going to shut the car off. But he changed his tires, came all the way back to the field. Like, I'm surprised they didn't break his back as how hard he landed.
I guess they changed the front wing too, right?
They definitely changed the front wing and tires, but that was it. And I'm sure that there's some damage in the car. And I guarantee you those Alpine mechanics tonight are going to be looking up over that car saying like, wow, we did a good job. I guess being overweight was worth it.
What is this thing made of? Yeah, it was. It was truly astounding to see the level of damage the Aston Martin took compared to the amount of damage. Because he hit the barrier, right, as well.
He did.
Which is how could he smash into the back of the Aston Martin, hit fly up into the air, land, that should be it, right? That should have been it. Hit the barrier, that should have been it. And still, trundles round, goes back. I mean, of course, he had, I think another safety car, maybe. Or was that the last one?
There was 2 safety cars, right? Because I think that was the first one. No,
the first one was Valtteri. Valtteri
was Valtteri, yeah.
And how on earth did he manage 7th place? Unbelievable.
Almost 6th.
Unbelievable work from Fernando Alonso, except for the fact that he smashed into... Oh, no, but that was Lance's fault, right?
Yeah, so here's the thing, right? I mean, I don't think it was a super straightforward one. I mean, clearly Alonso was coming up. To me, it did seem like Lance made a very late chop. I don't really know what Alonso could have done. He was pretty committed to the move. And essentially what happened was Alonso climbed up Lance's rear wheel, launched him in the air, and then once his front end was in the air, these are ground effects cars, they're flat and designed for aerodynamics in the bottom, it basically caught the car like a wind sail, dragged it. Now, thankfully, it didn't actually flip. So while his front was way in the air, and it's funny seeing him like trying to steer as his tires are like.
I couldn't like it's wild, right? Again, it's like the reactions are wrong because the reactions of the people behind like somehow missing it, like go. But like that idea that he's just like, no, I got to try and control this thing because when I land, I want to be in the unbelievable, like,
wild,
absolutely incredible, and then just like what a race from Fernando Alonso, like.
Yeah.
Oh, what a drive. And it is really funny that, like, those two are going to be teammates in, a couple of months. Like, end of next month, they are teammates.
I feel bad for Lance because, I mean,
Me
he
too.
was in P3.
He had a
like,
fantastic race. And that was, that's just one of those things. That was like not great, but they're all doing that, some version of that, right? And I think it might have been Martin Brundle was like, it is kind of wild that doesn't happen more often.
Yeah, because you see these super late moves all the time.
They're always doing that to each other.
It looks exciting. It looks cool, especially considering how tight everything is. But it's another thing when it's just a little bit off, how it turns into an airplane accident almost immediately.
So are we blaming Fernando Alonso for not being able to get out of the way? Is that the official back market's response? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No. He threw his parachute and got a softer landing and kept going. That was honestly the moment of the race for me, though. I think that is going to be the moment that I'm going to remember from this race. Is just like seeing him flying through the air. Mind you, I think if you look at it from his onboard, it makes a little bit more sense because you look at it from that one TV angle. He's flying, you see all this dust and dirt, and his wing, starts shedding pieces, and he hits the wall. But you look at it from his angle, and he got incredibly lucky because he came up, flew for a solid second or whatever. He comes down right past where the access road was. So if he would have hit that access road, he could have hit the edge of the barrier. It would have been 150 to 0. Yeah.
Because it was fast.
Instead, he sort of exactly. So instead, he lands, he sort of bounces off the barrier, but not super hard. The tire takes the impact, but it didn't seemingly wreck his suspension or anything. His front wing was already wrecked from the Lance collision, and he just kept going. But you just imagine how
a thing we do not see very often is collisions at that speed. Like it's very rare to see a collision between two drivers at those kinds of speeds. It just doesn't happen very much. Most collisions happen on cornering, right? Which is fast, but it's not as fast. This was a wild, and also like I think what happened, right, is his front wheel hit Lance's back wheel, which is what propelled him up. That's what happened with Max and Lewis last year.
Yeah,
when Max went on top of Lewis,
50 miles an hour.
But like it was the same thing, and again, like those cars are touching all the time. It really, it's like a matter of a few inches between hitting the wheels, just touching the wheels, and the wheels hitting each other and like causing that maneuver. Because, it's just they're both going in the same direction. One hits and it's just going to fly off. So it really is wild that we don't see that more often.
I completely agree. But man, that was a wild moment. So that led to, essentially that was safety car number 2. Everything came through. And then it's still at this point in the race is looking like Max has got this easy.
Oh no, not easy. Max has got it, but not easy. No, really. He was under pressure for the entire race this weekend in a way that he has not been for a long time. The pack was bunching up on him. There was like 2 to 3 second gaps for most of the race. Like he was going to win. Like there wasn't a doubt about it at that moment. But it wasn't. This was not the commanding Verstappen race that we have seen recently, and he seemed to be having a tough time. Like the wind seemed to be affecting the car a lot. He was upset for a lot of the race.
Yeah, and also he was talking about like his drivability, and he's having to potentially turn the power down or play with his strat modes and whatnot. So you're right. But I think it's props to him that he dealt with 2 safety cars ruining his lead. Then he dealt with a horrible pit stop, which really is what energized the race.
Catastrophic. Had to change the gun pit stop. Like it was as bad as they can be. Never as bad as the Bottas one. No pit.
You read my mind.
No pit will ever be as bad as when Valtteri Bottas's wheel nut was sending shards into the grandstands.
The 23-hour pit stop.
Oh, so good. Did he ever get out of that?
I actually think it legitimately was the next day when the Mercedes crew were able to get the wheel off.
No, but like,
So I think
was that the end of his race?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I couldn't
'Cause,
remember if they ended. No, that was the end of his race, wasn't it?
that was the end of his race. Yeah, and the next morning they finally got the wheel off. So
It's like a sword in the stone. They had to, like whoever could get the wheel off becomes like a knight of the
was-
round table.
no one was worthy.
So
Oh man.
yeah, this and then it opened up the race for Lewis. And hey, look,
And Charles.
more for Lewis though, right? Like because Charles was there, right? Like Charles was there the whole time. But like the thing was, is it opened up for Lewis to win, and I will say he got closer than I thought he was going to. I did not think he was going to win. I was very excited that this was the greatest possibility of him doing so. Like obviously, right? Like I was really excited, but I knew the only way, because what I was hoping for was that Max messed up somehow, right? Like that, or that something had to happen. Like I knew that if Max could race a clean race, he was taking Lewis. Like that, there was no way around that. Like as was proven, because that's just what he can do right now. It needed something, it needed, obviously, because I wanted Lewis to win, I was hoping that Max was going to get that penalty that he was both of them were actually so close to getting, But yeah, it was a thrilling end to the race. I was very happy for Lewis to pick up a P2. I would say this is, on race pace, the most... it was the best performance that Mercedes have had from a driver in a race. I feel like they look like they could do it, right? Like they were there, and they were there. He was there the whole time, and he had every advantage that everybody else had, and he was able to hang in. And like if that pit stop for Max would have come three laps later, Lewis would have won it, right? Like.
Yeah, he did not win by a large margin. He was able to finally overhaul Lewis. And to be fair, when they actually went wheel to wheel, they were spicy.
It was great. It was so great. And again, it was like I just wish, I pray that Mercedes can get it together for next year, because boy, do I want to see that again. Right? Like, do I want to see that again from them? It was super close and really excellent. And at the end, I feel like at the end, Lewis kind of ended up holding back a bit because he knew he was running risk of the penalty too. So I think he just wanted to secure his second place at that point, because that's very valuable to him. Lewis is now in the standings. I think he's just pulled up to Sainz now, obviously, because Sainz didn't pull any points. Yeah. So Lewis is now 4 points behind Carlos Sainz. George is now 16 points ahead of Carlos Sainz. I feel like at this point, so we got Charles in second, Sergio in third. I reckon Sergio's probably going to take second.
You think so?
Yes, I do.
The Red Bull is just... it's not really close with the Ferrari right now. The Ferrari, with every advantage you've got. To be fair, Leclerc did a great job and got very lucky with that first safety car, but the Ferrari's not there, right? Like the Ferrari does not have.
That's what $7 million will do for you. Am I right?
Oh,
am I right? You know what I'm saying?
We'll go with that. Someone else I want to give a shout out to is Lando. I'm going to move on directly from that one. Look, shout out to Lando though, for real. He, toward that last stint, was slicing and dicing.
I don't
some
know
of those moves he pulled off.
What was going on with some of these guys in the last few laps of this race, but like it was just lap after lap, Lando was taking someone else. Really perfect from him.
It was, I would almost say, too aggressive. There were a couple of moves where I was like, boy, you got away with that one. But he was just like on rails, like, just driving as if he was possessed. It was terrific to see. I wish we got a little bit more of that on camera. And then, of course, we got to talk about Seb, right? Seb had a terrific race, led a few laps there. He had solid strategy, really good pace. Like, really, it was a very, very solid race. And then he had sort of the Max plus pit stop.
Yeah, that was such a shame, right? Like, he had I don't know what was going on there. They just couldn't get the wheel on or something, and then they put him down too early, so had to lift him up, and it seemed like there was a lot of confusion amongst the crew, which led to a as you say, pretty poor pit stop. But I mean, honestly, did it hamper Seb's race that much? No, like.
Well, okay, so
As in, what I'll say is probably I should finish my thought. Compared to what you would have assumed he might have done in this race, right? Like he came in 8th. That is an excellent result for Aston Martin.
Yeah, the problem is he would have almost certainly got 6th if he had not had that problem,
I mean,
right?
my boy Lando was slicing and dicing the track, so who could tell? You know what I mean?
But the thing is,
he would have been fighting with George, right? Like that. That would have been, and especially if they would have brought George in, still would have brought George in for that pit to do the fastest lap, which as you're right, they probably wouldn't have done it. But I mean, that incredibly unlucky for Seb, but led to Seb's best drive of the season, I think.
I agree.
He wouldn't have driven to that level. We wouldn't have had that highlight reel from him at the end, I feel like. But it would have met a result for him. But what does he want more? Honestly, I don't know. Would he prefer to have more highlights and points right now? Like, what does it matter to him?
Does he care? I think he's got to care about the highlights. Who cares about the points?
That's what I feel like, right? Like, he got to do the thing today, so he led a lap, which got him to 3,500 laps led in his career, so big day for Seb. And then he got some really excellent TV time. I mean, maybe that's best. I don't know, because it's not like, the extra 3 points or whatever would have made that much of a difference to him in the standings for the season. So, like where is he? He's 11th.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think he cares at all. I think he's just having fun and driving well and just, going out on a high, which is exactly what you kind of hope for.
He is 10 points behind Valtteri right now.
That makes me think about it's a different year.
Yeah, and I will say that's an achievable distance, maybe for him to. I mean, especially if Valtteri just pirouettes off the track.
Yeah, that sucked, man. But look, Mike, here's the thing, okay? And everyone who's watching us live or listening to us right now, there's one moment of the race that I think is going to stand above all else. It was the glory, the magnificence, and the incredulity on all of our faces as we saw Timothy Cook wave the checkered flag.
Why did they? Because if he didn't want to do it, why did they ask him to do it? Like, if he didn't want to do it, why did he do it? Why didn't Eddie do it? Eddie could have cared. Why?
Eddie was very excited. I like how they cut to that one shot in the garage where it's like, look, it's like Ed Sheeran and it's like Eddie Q and Tim Cook. They're like, oh, ignore these guys.
I love it. It's like,
Ed
here's
Sheeran.
Stefan Domenicali talking to Ed Sheeran with one of the most powerful people in the world in the room, and Eddie Q. Gotta love Eddie. I mean, Eddie's a big car guy, right? Do you know he sits on the board at Ferrari?
Oh, actually, I did not know that.
He's on the board of Ferrari. So he's up and about all the time. Do you know, just pop quiz, do you know why they were there?
Well, I know that Tim Cook was in Austin to talk about like their manufacturing in the new thing.
They were there for this, and he ended up going to Austin. So Brad Pitt is making a movie about Formula One. Next year, they are going to be shooting this movie on race weekends.
Oh, interesting.
That movie is going to be an Apple TV Plus. That movie, by the way, directed by the Top Gun Maverick director.
Oh,
as well as really Lewis Hamilton as a producer. And Lewis is also, he has been producing a documentary about his life. Is also going to be an Apple TV Plus. So Tim and Eddie, they are there to be with Brad as this whole thing about Brad Pitt and the movie being announced of being shot. That was all announced today about the movie being shot next year. So they were there for this.
So do you think Eddie just likes Formula One a lot and just dragged Tim and everyone else along? Like, look, let's pay for it. Let's do it. Come on.
I think that, I mean, I can see that. But I think that they are very smart pieces of content to own if you're Apple.
Yeah. No, I agree. Very excited to see. I mean, obviously, it's not going to hold a candle to the greatest racing movie of all time, which is, The Ballad of Ricky Bobby, Talladega Nights. However, I think this could be third or fourth place potentially, but we'll see. I'm excited. I like the fact that they're going to be shooting it actually on race weekends
Yeah.
at the tracks. That's really neat. I like that.
I'm intrigued what that is going to look like, to be like. Like, there isn't really much known about this movie, except the fact that it's happening. No one knows when it's set. No one knows what it's even about, right? Like, so who knows, right? Are they going to use real drivers? There isn't really anything known about it right now. And everyone, but that's why they were all there. And Tim Cook got given the checker flag and did a terrible job of it and looked about as grumpy as a man could look doing anything.
Yeah, look, Tim was just having a good time. He was just there to show face, to wave some flag around. I'm sure it was fine. Can I actually say that actually reminds me of a story I've not thought about in a long time. So they actually shot, like I kind of mentioned, they shot Ricky Bobby in a similar kind of way, where they shot it at racetracks, a number of different races throughout the year. I was actually at one of the races they were filming at. I didn't understand it, and I was also like 12 or something. But they basically did a couple of extra laps before the race, and they just had all of the, the hero cars, all the movie cars up front with a couple of camera cars around. They did 2 laps to shoot all their footage for that race. Then all the movie cars pulled off, and they actually did the real race. I'll be curious to see if they actually bring out any of the proper Formula One cars. I'm going to assume probably not, since it's probably way more expensive to run Formula One cars. But that just jogged a memory I had not thought about in a long time, of actually seeing how they had filmed that at a NASCAR race,
I'm assuming
18 years ago?
They will use previous year cars, like 2020, 2021 cars, and have some drivers or ex-drivers driving in them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can totally believe it. You also can imagine they're going to borrow the track for 30 minutes, in the middle of a session or in between something or whatever, to go and grab all the stuff that they need. But I'm assuming they're wanting to film at actual race weekends to have all of the drivers there who may or may not be making cameos, to have the full
Again,
crowds,
it depends when
to
it's
have all
set,
that
though,
stuff.
right? Like, that's the thing. Like, if this is set in the 90s, you don't want Max Verstappen in it.
Yeah.
Right, like, that's the question
also,
of, like, when is this is... I don't know when this movie is meant to be.
If they're doing it on race weekends, it's got to be contemporary. Because if you're going to be doing a sort of more historical race, you almost don't like how much extra work is going to be to digitally replace all the advertising boards and scrub everything. It'll be easier just to rent the tracks when they're sitting empty 300 days a year and then just shoot it then. I've got to imagine it's going to be at least somewhat contemporary with some of the actual real cars.
Yeah, I reckon it's probably set in modern-ish time, but I don't imagine they'll be using 2023 race cars in the movie, because something goes wrong, there's too much money. But these cars, they still work. They use them all the time for promotional stuff. And race weekends, there's a lot of time in a race weekend, right? Like, you could do this on Saturday. You could do this on Friday, especially these days. Attendance is full for the whole weekends. So, I mean, I can't imagine they would do it on race day. I do not think they would do it on Sundays. But there's enough time on Fridays and Saturdays where you could do this kind of stuff. So that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Should we close out this episode with some of our usual awards for the races?
I would love nothing more.
Was there any back markers? There weren't, were there?
Technically, no, but there were some back markers at heart.
Okay.
I'm going to give this, and this is going to be, even by our standards of controversial picks for back markers, I'm going to give this to Alonso. Not because he finished the race as a back marker, but because he shouldn't have finished the race at all. And he was basically a back marker after his accident, and yet fought his way all the way through.
He sure marked the back of Lance Stroll.
Oh, okay.
Hey! Well, I'm on one today, man. I'm feeling it. We should do these at 11 p.m. London time more often. It got me fully unhinged.
Mike's got a couple of adult beverages and he's ready to rock.
I wished, man. I wished. Underperformer. Right. I'm with you, Alonso, all the way, because he went to the back, right? Like, he went to the very, very back. That truly an incredible performance from him. Underperformer of the race for me, Daniel Ricciardo.
Yeah, dude. This is one of those races where I have no idea what was wrong. He was 16th place, 90 seconds down. He was behind literally everyone. Like no, sorry. He was ahead of Latifi, who got penalties and who's my underperformer of the race, just because penalties, pushing people off, it's just nonsense, right? But I don't get what's going on with Danny Rick. It's like sometimes he's on, sometimes he's off. It's like a different guy shows up to the track, especially when you see the pace of the car. You see what Lando was able to slice and dice, and then Danny Rick is just like chilling in the back. Like you said, if he shows up on a horse, you can't do that. These two things do not add up.
You can't have all the bravado and then not back it up on the track. Yeah, and unfortunately, this season, Daniel Ricciardo has been a lot of bravado, and it's a shame because people love him. Yeah. I think he seems like a really nice guy, but the sport's pushing him out. Your favorite thing from the race?
For me, it's definitely got to be the fact that, a third of the way through the race, actually, like a lot of races this year, it seemed like it was settled. It seemed like it was not going to be super spicy. The Ferraris were basically out of it. The Mercedes didn't have the pace. Max was going to walk away with it. And then a bunch of things happened, and that was not the case. While that was ultimately the end result, it got really, really spicy for the vast majority of the race. It was only until the last couple of laps that was really settled. And I thoroughly enjoyed that.
Yeah, I would say the same. The closeness of it was fun for me. I like it when they're close. Even if the result ends up being the same. I like the excitement of wondering what's going to happen. When someone's 20 seconds ahead, it takes some of the fun out of it. Because yes, there are a lot of things happening in the midfield always, and that's exciting. But this sport is about winners, right? Like like that's what it's about. And so the front of the pack is always going to be the thing that's focused on the most. So I like it when there's actually a story going on there, and not like, well, Max is 20 seconds ahead. But if Charles picks up 1.4 seconds a lap for the next 60, it's like it's not exciting, right?
Yeah.
Driver of the day.
Okay. So I think there are a couple of names we could throw out here. I mean, Alonso, of course.
Of course.
Right? I mean, I think. But also, while I want to give him props for backmarker, I don't know if he necessarily deserves driver of the day because he did a really good job. But also, I would say props to Alpine for designing an impossibly tough car that can fly and still drive.
He was lucky to continue.
Yes.
That had nothing to do with him. The fact that the car could still go.
Yes. That's like you could probably have that accident 20 times in a row and you're going to drive away from it once. And he got really lucky from that. Then, I mean, Seb would be an
Yes, I will throw Lewis in there because I think Lewis had a great race. But I think from the way that we have spoken about him, this is Sebastian Vettel's driver. This is his race of the season, let alone that he had a great performance today. This is probably the most we will have seen and thought and spoken about of Seb during a race this year, and I think that's fantastic. And so I'm very happy that he has had a moment like that this year, where he otherwise maybe wouldn't have, and I think it would have been tragic if he would have not have had a race where he would have been considered. Well, you could see, right? You could see why he was a world champion. I think in today's race, I think he was absolutely stupendous.
No, he did a terrific job. Got really unlucky, kind of in the opposite way that Alonso got really lucky. With that pit stop. But, I mean, he was doing a terrific job. Seeing him lead those laps was awesome. Look, I think he won the actual driver of the day, voted by the fans, and I think we're going to be right there with them. Congratulations, Seb. You get the official backmarker driver of the day award.
The real win.
That's really the thing to celebrate.
That's what you want. We're hurtling towards the end of the season now. Oh, we didn't even talk about the fact that Red Bull are the Constructors' champions.
That was decided like 3 months ago.
But they did it, though. Congratulations, Red Bull. I love that they already had the flag. There's something about that. Surely.
Again, like, they made those flags 3 months ago.
Sport is superstitious, right? Like, making the flag, I don't know, man. I mean, obviously, it went fine for them. But congratulations.
Good job, Red Bull. Condolences on what was a sad weekend in a lot of ways, but ultimately
made the most of it.
Thoroughly dominant one. Absolutely.
They said it's their first constructors since 2013.
Yeah.
And may it be the last. All right, so we'll move on for like another 10 years. Just like another 10 years.
Sure. We'll go with that. Sure, Mike. Sure.
Oh boy.
Yep. So we've got a short 7-day span until the Mexican Grand Prix. And I always like Mexico City. It's such a cool, I mean, especially when you get to, is it the stadium section? What the little like circle thing?
That's so
That's
good.
so cool.
That is
So
a
cool.
beautiful moment. It's that tiny, like, it's a sharp right hand going into a left, right? And you've got the stadiums just appear out of nowhere.
Yeah.
That was where Checo did a ton of celebrating last year.
Yeah, yeah.
That's where Checo's dad was running around.
Yep. I'm very excited for that. But
I hope for a Checo repeat.
You gotta, yes, of course.
Or
of
Lewis.
course. How can you not root for Checo?
For me, obviously. If it's not going to be Checo, I'll take Lewis. Or other way around.
Look, we got 3 more races. Everything is decided. The championship, the constructors, drivers. There's still some good fights, though, as far as who's going to finish P2, who's going to finish P4. And obviously in the constructors, it's still really quite close. But I think we're in for 3 races of Max probably winning, but a lot of other exciting stuff happening everywhere else. So...
And then we've got the Brazilian Grand Prix, which is a pseudo home race for Lewis Hamilton. Do you know this?
Yeah.
He's an honorary citizen of Brazil.
I'm not sure how an honorary, like, does he get an honorary passport that's just like an IOU passport?
I mean,
I don't actually know
maybe.
what that means.
I feel like if you're an honorary citizen, they'll just let you in anyway.
I know, right? Like, but hey, cool. That's very exciting, I guess.
And then, oh man, Brazil is the penultimate race.
It is.
Then we go to Yas Marina.
Yes,
Marina.
No. Mike. We got 3 more episodes to get through right now. We cannot do the
I'm doing it
shit.
already. I do it all the time, man.
Aw.
I do it all the time. It's my favorite. All right. We'll be back for the Mexican Grand Prix. I hope it was exciting as this one. I had a great time today.
Same.
If you want to catch us in... Oh, go ahead. Please go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to pitch to our cooldown room for any audio-only listeners. Make sure to come over and see the live feed over at our channel, available at youtube.com, of course, where we can break down all the fun stuff. And the second we stop recording, Mike and I inevitably lose our minds and start yelling about Yas Marina.
Backmarkers.live for the YouTube videos. It's where you can also watch us live. Backmarkers.fm for the audio. We are at Backmarkers Live on Twitter. And we'll be back for the next race, Mexican Grand Prix. Until then, say goodbye, Austin.
Goodbye, adios, and see you later, partner. All right.
That was markedly shorter than usual.
I was trying to not just make a disaster like I usually do. I put effort in, Mike. I put in effort.
Oh.
It was like 5 a.m. last time, okay? Cut me some slack, jeez. All right.
That was episode 18, right?
I cannot believe that is, yes, episode 18. All right, audio is uploading to the folder. All right, friends, Austin after the Austin GP. Look, there's a moment where, like, okay, so I know I've talked about this in the past, but, like, I went to the Austin Grand Prix 2019, and while it was a really cool race, the unbelievable amounts of traffic and nonsense made me really reconsider how worth it is to pay giant piles of money and sit around in the hot sun and wait around for 4 hours for a school bus to take me to my car. Like, that really was like one of those things that kind of made me kind of question whether or not I really want to go see more races that often. But then watching this race, I was like, man, I wish it was there. I wish it was there, man.
Yeah, I will say I'm in like a Slack or whatever with a bunch of people, like just a bunch of F1 fans in tech, and it seems like a bunch of people that were at COTA. They said the traffic is so much worse this year. They closed down some of the pathways and stuff, and it's even worse. It took someone like 90 minutes to get out yesterday. Yesterday.
Yeah, no, I completely believe it.
Not even today. Yeah, it seems really rough.
Here's the thing. If anyone has never gone to COTA before, it's in Austin, right? And you can see from turn 1, you know, they have that beautiful shot down where you see the Austin skyline. But the problem is that once you get out of sight of Austin proper, it's just a bunch of farm roads, right? So you've got over 100,000 people with like 4 2-lane roads to service. Like, saying that there's a lack of infrastructure is not even like It's like it's ridiculous, right? It's absolutely ridiculous. That
This
many
kind of
people
thing
there.
is like, because this is, I think it's somewhat similar with Silverstone too. That it's like really hard to get out because it is an area which is otherwise not very populated. It's like in that area, it's Silverstone. Like that's what's there. It's like this is a small town. It makes me hesitant to want to go to a race, like knowing like
Yeah.
because look, I mean, you can tell me, but I can't imagine that going to a race. I mean, obviously it's exciting, but it's not like other sports because you
It's
you
very
can't actually
different.
see what's happening. You're just, most of the time
Correct,
just
yeah.
watching on a screen anyway. You're just there for the, I guess, the ambiance of it, right?
Totally.
And the
Absolutely. No,
excitement.
no. So the thing is, if you've never attended a Grand Prix, there are some neat things, right? So especially if you go for the entire 3 days, or at least for a couple days, there's lots of stuff going on. You'll see support races. One of the things I really like, usually on Sundays,
Yeah.
you'll see like historical racing. So you see, a bunch of like 80s F1 cars. You'll see a bunch of other stuff. Like it actually is really exciting, and it's a really like sort of fun atmosphere, generally speaking. The problem is that certain tracks like Austin, even when it's middle of October, can still be scorching hot. There's a very little sort of sun, and you're right. Even if you've got great seats, you're gonna be looking at what, one, maybe two corners. So it's one of those things where, yes, it's a cool experience, but depending on the race, and especially considering that tickets have gotten way more expensive. Like, so when I went 3 years ago, or whatever, I think the tickets at the time were expensive, and they were like, I think $300 each. I would not be surprised if Coda next year is like $800, $1,000. Like those tickets are
I would say, like,
wildly expensive.
It's what makes Vegas so enticing as a race.
Oh, what are you talking about? You think Vegas could be better?
Well, but like you don't have to go. You're not like when the race is done. Great, let me go get in my car and
Okay,
drive.
Yeah, that's true.
Right, like you're there. The hotel that you're staying. All you have to do is just get back to your hotel or whatever, which is not difficult in Vegas.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to pay $7,000.
I'm not saying it's going to be cheap. I never said that. I'm just saying logistically, Vegas is a draw for that reason. I mean, I guess like similarly to like I'm sure how Monaco is, right? That like you're either in a hotel or you're on a boat. Well, when the race ends, you're already where you were. So
yeah, that's true. I think if I was gonna drop $7,000 for a night at a room in Vegas, I could just spend some money and have like a helicopter fly me out of Austin or something and still save a whole bunch on it. It's just, to me, it's like, I love the fact that purpose-built racetracks exist, right? I think watching a race at Coda is so much more exciting than pretty much any other street circuit. But the downside is you can only build a big racetrack like that in the middle of absolute nowhere because it would not make sense to have a permanent racetrack right in the middle of a major city. And because of that, there's no way you can ever justify having the infrastructure to make it less than a 6-hour trek to go, without the race being there would take you 15 minutes, right? It's crazy to me, especially considering how expensive it is. So I enjoy going to races. I will do more races in the future, but with it being this popular and this expensive and this hard to get in and out of, I'm gonna be an old man and watch it on TV and then hang out after and not have to deal with it.
yeah, I'm not. I want to do a race at some point, but like I also don't feel like I am rushing to that.
You should try to do Silverstone though.
I want
think
to.
If that's gonna be like my top 5 tracks that I ever want to go see. Of course, I would love to go see Monaco. Silverstone is a big one. Singapore seems like it'd be cool. China actually also seems like it would be cool. There's some races that I would love to sort of participate in, but I think, if you can do it, I feel like that'd be really, really rad.
Yeah,
just be patient.
It will be something I will do one day, right? But it is not something that I feel like I am rushing to do.
Yeah, you see the downsides of it.
Yeah, I would love. I mean, like the dream would be to save up for a while and try and get one of the paddock kind of things, right? Like I know people that have done that, and it looks fantastic.
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Like there's a massive difference between if you're fortunate enough to have, an all access pass and all this kind of stuff versus if you're in sort of general admission or you're kind of crammed around and sitting around. Like if you get yourself a helicopter and you get to go hang out with Toto in the paddock, I'm sure you'll have a great time, but I don't think those you can't really buy those tickets. I guess you probably could, but
You can buy those tickets.
it's just a lot of money.
Well, yeah, I mean that's a different thing. But like like if you can get one of those like passes, because then you get a thing that you wouldn't get otherwise, right? Like you get to like do a grid war, not grid war, but like a pits. You go to walk across the pits and like you know, and you're in like it's like a whole hospitality kind of thing, and so you got like, it's like uncomfortable, and maybe if you're above the pit lane, it should be in some of them, you get to see that, which is like, that's like a cool thing. So maybe maybe I will just wait until I could do something like that and be like, all right, I've done it one time, and then that's that. I don't know.
No, look, it's exciting, it's fun. It's just gotten really busy and really expensive.
All right, I gotta run because I gotta put this thing together. I gotta
Love
go
it.
home.
All right. Goodbye, friends.
Nice t-shirt, by the way.
It's late for you. Oh, look, I gotta rep it. I gotta rep
too.
it. This is the subtlety.
Look at this.
Oh, dude, wait, are we twinning for the second? Wait, we did this last time, didn't we?
Yeah, I wear them all the time though.
Oh yeah. Well, I wear it too.
Half of my wardrobe is these things. This is the sweatshirt version because it's cold in here.
I have one, but I wear it over and over.
Well, it's available right now, Austin.
Ooh, where could I find it, Mike?
Go to cortexmerch.com.
Wonderful. Oh, it feels
Loads
so
of colors.
soft. It's almost as if you're giving me a hug 24/7.
Cortexmerch.com. I would say I recommend it because we only put them on sale once a year. So if you want,
maybe you should stock up. This is my only color.
maybe you should. Maybe you should stock up. You know.
You know what? I might just go to cortexmerch.com and load it
I would
up.
love it. You just please do it. All right. Bye.
All right.